If you are a new floodplain administrator, you may be wondering, what are the floodplain maps and how can I find them? You may also be an experienced floodplain administrator and need to explain what the maps are and where to find them to stakeholders in your community, like property owners, real estate professional developers, and more. So what are they and where can you find them? Flood insurance rate maps, or FIRMs, are the official floodplain maps for the National Flood Insurance Program, or NFIP. They delineate the regulatory boundary that local jurisdictions use for administering their floodplain management programs, and they serve as the basis for flood insurance requirements nationwide. You can find them online at the FEMA Map Service Center. Using the search bar, enter an address, a place, or the longitude and latitude coordinates. If you want to find all products for your community, click on Search All Products. There, you can find effective products like the maps, flood insurance studies, and letters of map change, preliminary and pending products if you have any, historic products, and other flood risk products. Let's look at the flood maps. Flood maps identify the Special Flood Hazard Area, or SFHA. SFHAs are labeled with zones starting with the letters A or V, and they will be shaded. On digital map viewers, the SFHA is shaded in aqua or teal color. On paper maps, the SFHA is shaded dark gray. SFHAs are subject to inundation by flood that has a 1% or greater chance of being equaled or exceeded during any given year. This type of flood is commonly referred to as the 100-year flood. However, it is more accurate to call it the 1% annual chance flood, or base flood, because it can actually end up flooding multiple times in 1 year, year after year, or every few years for a period of time. The SFHA, which includes any of the flood zones starting with A or V, is where you'll have to require local floodplain development permits for all proposed development. This helps ensure the development standards are met and help keep people and their property reasonably safe from flooding. Floodways are also considered part of the SFHA and are shaded with altering aqua or teal and red diagonal lines on digital map viewers, or with dark gray shading with diagonal lines on paper maps. Floodways have some of the most stringent development requirements because the floodway needs to be reserved to let the base flood flow through the channel. The floodway is where the flood has the right of way. This helps avoid flooding outside the channel where there's people and property, as well as up and downstream. It also helps protect private property rights by preventing development on one site from backing up and increasing the level of flood risk at neighboring sites. You may see numbers printed on the maps known as the base flood elevations, or BFEs. These are important because they indicate the anticipated flood height for the 1% annual chance event. Floodplain development standards require building components like lowest floors and utility equipment to be at or above the BFE. Be careful though, you can't always read the BFE straight from the firm. In some areas, the BFE printed on the firm is a rounded number. For a more precise reading, you can refer to your community's Flood Insurance Study, or FIS, which lists the BFE to the 10th decimal place. In zones AO, areas of sheet flow, the BFE will be listed as a flood depth from 1 to 3 feet. In those areas, you can use the whole number BFE printed on the firm. The SFHA is also where the mandatory purchase requirement applies, which is the requirement for lenders to require homeowners and business owners inside the SFHAs to purchase flood insurance if they have a government-backed loan on the building. Other flood insurance requirements may apply in the SFHA as well. It is important to know that the SFHA is not the only place it can flood in your community, so the flood maps shouldn't be used as a standalone community planning or development tool. You'd have to consider future land use plans, climate conditions, and more for that. In fact, if a large flooding event happens, it's actually anticipated that water levels would rise higher than the base flood and inundate areas outside the SFHA boundaries. Additionally, localized flooding can happen in any flood zone due to an intense rainfall, stormwater drainage, surface runoff, and new development. For instance, improperly anchored accessory structures or fuel tanks can float away in floodwaters, block drainage channels, and exacerbate flooding. Flood maps are continually updated through a variety of processes, including updates that should be submitted by your community to help keep the maps up to date. You can find these letters of map change on the FEMA Map Service Center. Or if you have digital data available in your area, you can view them on FEMA's National Flood Insurance Hazard Layer, or NFHL viewer, by selecting that layer on the layer list. A good resource to call on for help with flood maps is the FEMA Mapping and Insurance Exchange. Mapping specialists are available to help answer questions about the maps, engineering data, and changes to the maps, as well as general insurance information. You can call the toll-free information line at 1-877-FEMA-MAP or 1-877-336-2627, or visit the customer care website. Your job as a floodplain administrator helps to protect people and their property from flood damage and help maintain and restore the natural and beneficial functions of the floodplain.